Welcome everyone to Create InHouse or BuyIn, the age-old question revisited in the era of online learning with Marlene Leekang, the Executive Director of the Laurence N Field Center for Entrepreneurship at Baruch College. She oversees a multifaceted division of programs and services for students, staff, and the community with a focus on redevelopment of the overarching programming to offer complementary services, create a diverse ecosystem of entrepreneurial experiences. For those of you who are looking for how crisis leadership creates opportunities for university teaching establishments, with Dr. Amy Hawkins of the University of Central Arkansas, please scroll to the top of the agenda and click on track 1 or join track 3 to hear feedback fruits in the Tech Lab. Thank you, Marlene. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Vishta. All right, let me just move this over and out of the way. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you here virtually, which proves my point in this slide. Everything nowadays has moved to an online platform. Dating, workouts, happy hours with friends, game nights with family, music battles have been a lot of fun for me personally, conferences like these, and of course, school is online for pretty much everyone, including my own elementary school-age children who have been learning remotely for over a year. For someone with relatively substantial experience in building an online learning unit and online programs, watching the migration from in-person delivery to online delivery without an established online model was quite interesting. Online learning in itself became synonymous with emergency online learning, which in my opinion has been the bulk of the experience for those new to online learning over the last year. The emergency online learning experience has felt as if all aspects of in-person activities, from science to sports to reading and writing, were picked up and dropped into a virtual environment and called online learning. Don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking it. Organizations had to really get it together to maintain continuity for their learners. It was a necessary fix at the time, but we're here to talk about truly establishing online programming. Thoughtful and strategic online learning programming takes into account many facets of learning styles, teaching, and the needs of a learner to expand beyond the content. Successful online programs capture the social aspects of learning, addresses learning styles, and truly engrosses a learner with resources beyond the scope of the instructor. Before everything was online learning was not a priority for many institutions. There was a time when it was nice to have, not a need to have. Online learning gave much room for out-of-the-box initiatives, new program ideas, different structures and formats for delivering content, additional reach of students and instructors, and of course considered the pocket change for an institution. You're here in this presentation, so you're either in the online learning space, in some way, or ready to take a dive into the pool. And obviously, you know, the water is heavily loaded with great giant players dominating the online learning industry. I won't name names, but I know you know the big schools and OPMs, the online program management vendors whose names are synonymous with online programs. What we realized in 2020 was that the big players continued their business as usual when we shut down for quarantine. They did well, really well. Some expanded and provided more options in the space. We saw OPMs and universities both peddling their non-credit and traditional degree offerings, promising a brighter future to come. Now it's your turn to get in the game. Where do you start? This isn't an easy endeavor, but what I hope to do with this presentation today is to at least set you on a path that may help with understanding where you stand in the online learning space. First, you'll need to start with an internal assessment of your why. Identifying your goals is necessary in the beginning. Who do you want to be? Are you competing with the big guys or creating your own playing field? And what's your institution's priority? Is it creating a revenue stream or adding to your brand, or supporting students and faculty in what they want in learning flexibility? This reflection will help to establish what makes the most sense for you as an institution. Now that you've established your goals, let's look at what you have going on. Your next step is to take an inventory. What do you already have in place? Are there any ad hoc courses already online? Are some departments or faculty ready but feel they lack resources? Is there current bandwidth within services that can take on supportive roles for online programming? Do you have hidden expertise in the ranks? You may answer no to much of this, and that's okay. Reflecting and taking honest inventory on where you currently stand as an institution will help you determine your next questions. Obstacles and strengths will definitely come out of this exercise. That was a lot, right? But now you know your why and you know where you stand in the online learning space. Now let's look at whether creating in-house or buying in works for you. OPMs offer a lot, and it may seem overwhelming to understand. And you will need to dig deeper to understand the relationship you will have with the offered services and the OPM. OPMs are marketed as a one-stop shop for online learning programs. But before you think you've won the online learning lotto, let's look further at what you need to consider. There's a level of operations expected in even the smallest online program. Bandwidth, resources, and expertise are measurable commodities and should be taken seriously. Answering these questions with your inventory list will help determine which way to lean. Let's review some of these questions. What services does the OPM offer that you currently do not offer? You can compare what you come out of this question to the inventory list that you created. What can an OPM do for you that you cannot accomplish in-house? Answering this will help you know your realistic bandwidth. Are bundled services required, or can you opt into a la carte services? Ideally, a la carte services would be great for institutions with already established programs in some form or want help with some parts of the programming. But you need to ask this question and whether bundled or a la carte will work for you. Are these nice to have or need to have services? Are you jumping all in or gradually building your programming? So you have to weigh what's more important for you as an institution in terms of operation services. What would it cost to establish these services in-house? Your finance people will be so happy to see this analysis from you, and it would help to understand what support you'd need, whether you're in-house or getting these services from the vendor. Now let's talk vendor management. There is a misconception about the use of an OPM. At first, it may feel as if you've won the online learning lotto. Hold on now. Unfortunately, it is not hands-off. There is a significant level of day-to-day management and oversight required for a successful program. These questions to ask yourself will help understand your needs once again and which way your institution will lean in this decision that you make. Let's look at the questions. Who will manage the relationship day-to-day, the accountability, and the oversight? Someone needs to be an account manager, per se, to liaison between the institution and the vendor day-to-day, ensuring deliverables are met. What deliverables are expected on both ends? You don't know what you need until you need it. There are reports and there are data sets, and there's so much more that will come up as part of managing the relationship. What will the relationship be between the vendor, the OPM, and faculty and the internal leadership and the students? Having a liaison allows how much or how little the internal institution member are involved with the OPM, if you allow it at all. So this vendor management end really will answer a lot of this for you. Now that we've talked a little bit about operations and managing the relationship, let's talk about you as an institution and what that means when partnering with any vendor. Your brand is everything. Understanding how you'll be represented may be the most important conversation in this process for you. These questions will definitely help you set the tone on how an OPM will represent you if you choose to partner with them. First question, Will the OPM understand the current branding message of your institution? Would you need to teach them about who you are, about your brand message? Is there a level of education that needs to go into the management of the relationship? Will the OPM be able to represent for you with prospect students, partners, and other stakeholders? If you decide to take on student recruitment and other services, would the OPM represent as you, as X university, or would they be X vendor? That's a question to ask during your partnership discussion. Is identity masking available, or will the partnership be at the forefront? If you don't want the partnership displayed or known to those internally, will it be powered by, or is identity masking an available part of your relationship, meaning that the vendor will represent as you and no one would know the difference? Okay, we've gone through a lot of reflection here. It is a heavy load, I know. Let's look at the promises that an OPM makes. Be prepared for what you asked for. Fulfilled promises also means that an institution must respond with more resources. OPMs offer tremendous growth and opportunity. If realistic, is your institution prepared to manage and scale up with your end of services? Applications will go up. Student services will be needed to manage questions and emails and incomplete applications and rejection and acceptance letters and so forth. A really great example that I've experienced is the scalability problem of having very limited faculty to teach a niche program. You have so many more qualified students enrolling. Would you have enough classes to offer these new students? Are there enough faculty in the subject matter expert to teach? Would your instructor to student ratio increase? What about increased number of adjuncts to fill these gaps, which then impact your full-time to adjunct ratio as well? These are lots of questions to consider about scalability of partnering with an OPM. Lastly, keep in mind, OPM models vary and can be negotiable. Some considerations for you to keep in mind when working with an OPM. Some contracts can be lengthy. I've seen some spanning 10 to 20 years. Some OPMs want to be co-branded in the initiatives. Do you want this association with your brand? Are you competing with other clients they may have in the same disciplines? Are there exclusivity terms in place? And for some, the most important point, how is this partnership financially going to work? Some OPMs offer services for fees, while others have revenue share contracts in place with hefty splits. I've seen 50% and up for some. Now that we've gone through the process of determining whether to work with an OPM, let's return to establishing online learning programming at your institution. There are different models to which online learning can be developed. Faculty-driven models are all on the shoulders of the faculty members and at their own discretion. Academic department models may require their faculty to participate, but will face obstacles they may not be equipped to manage. The best part about faculty and department models is usually there are driving forces which make a compelling argument for moving towards a strategic online learning program plan. You won't have to twist their arms, and a dedicated unit for online learning can oversee much of the concerns in faculty and academic-driven models. A full-service unit, which tackles all areas of supporting online programming, will consist of a variety of service areas, which are staffed by people with these expertise. A unit which has all of these facets doesn't happen overnight. It's an evolution. You have to consider whether you're in a marathon, a sprint, or taking a stroll to get to a point where you've established a unit which can serve all these areas. Weighing the pros and cons to buy in and partner with an OPM or create a unit supporting your online learning initiatives in-house is not an easy exercise. And with the long-term contracts and revenue share and bandwidth issues and internal buy-in and so much more to consider, In the end, the expectations are the same no matter what you decide. Branding awareness, growth, and revenue will be constant questions from all your stakeholders involved in your online learning initiatives. I hope I've given you some tools to help make an informed and strategic decision for your institution. I am available to provide consultation on this subject if you'd like some help. Thank you so much. Please feel free to connect with me.
Thank you, Marlene. That is very, very interesting, and I'm sure very illuminating for our audience. A few questions. There's been a lot of discussion about transparency and the use of vendors, and whether the use of a vendor in various ways should be transparent to students, to the general public, to our parents. What are your thoughts on this, and how does this balance between the buy or to develop in-house?
I think that it depends on where the transparency needs to be. I believe that if you're using third parties for services, as in tech help or with recruitment and application processing, I don't think it makes a difference unless the vendor is not offering the same top-notch services you would do in-house. But if you're using a third-party vendor, an OPM, for content development, for them to create and add to what the actual learning is, I think the transparency is necessary. There's a level of why students choose your university. They're there for your faculty. They're there for what you offer in disciplines, and they're there for the content and the learning. So if you're getting that from someplace that is not grounded in your university culture, then the transparency should be there.
You mentioned scaling up. So when you scale up, there's obviously supply and demand, and you alluded to that a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about the balance as demand grows because you go online and access becomes more easy? The supply part of it from within the university in terms of the resources that you talked about. Can you mention that a little bit more and expand on that?
Absolutely. So the supply and demand doesn't exactly equal the same across every industry. You have typically, let's say, 500 applications every fall. You partner with an OPM and now you have 1,000. The processing time is different. The manpower, the people power to actually process that is different. Now maybe there's a time difference between getting those letters out, which then affect our students choosing your school because they want to go there or you got to them first. And then we want to go back to the learning and the disciplines. If you're in a very niche program and the expertise amongst faculty is very rare, how do you go find the physicist or the astronaut that you want to teach, but they're so few and far between? So yes, it would be great to have double and triple of your students every year, but if you don't have the actual supply to give them, which is the faculty and the courses, you will have a definite obstacle in the way to meet that demand.
So the online world has created a lot of flexibility.
Yes.
From fixed times, 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the evening, or maybe night school, to a 24/7, 365. Talk a little bit about in-house versus buy-in in terms of support services, not so much for the teaching, but the support services and the expectations that come from our students versus what we can actually, let's say, offer them.
So we live in this instant gratification world where we want to chat in immediately, get our tech help, know when our order is showing up tomorrow morning, even though we placed the order yesterday. So in our industry of education, our students want the exact same thing. And that's where transparency also belongs as well. There are some OPMs that offer this sort of service where there is a 24 round the clock support system in place for both students and faculty. But there is that level of management that also has to go in. Do you need them to react and behave the same way as you would do in-house during normal 9 to 5 business hours? And so there's a fee for that, or it's a bundled service. Is this costly for you? Or is it just not worth the hassle because you know that your students, you have maybe 5 people asking for services off hours, and you have to do this analysis. This is not a jump into it because 24/7 tech support is necessary when there's only 2 people utilizing the service. So there's a very heavy analysis that goes into this process to decide what services you need and what you don't. I think personally, especially if you're bandwidth strapped, resource strapped, cash strapped too, you should experiment a little bit. Offer maybe for a semester the 24/7 support. And if you have a heavy duty request for it, then you know that you either bring it in-house or you outsource and get someone to do it for you. Or you see no one's really looking for any support, especially nowadays when everyone is home, then you know what services you don't need.
You mentioned terms of contracts. With the rapid changes that are taking place in our environment, even those that have taken place over the last 18 months or less, changes in the way that universities function, what's your thought or your feel on the term of a contract with any sort of, say, off-campus provider?
So I went through this presentation itself derived from my own experience, asking myself these questions, really doing a deep dive into promises, and the contracts itself scared me. I am just that person that would rather be safe than sorry, and that was my job, to make sure that we were safe and not sorry. So when looking at the contracts, and there are very hefty terms in how long you're together in this relationship, what happens if you try to end the relationship, and how much you're giving into the relationship. And a lot of the times it is 50-50. But you must weigh whether the services that come out of this 50% agreement is worth the 50%, or are you giving away so much of what you're bringing in, and then you also cannot keep up with the demand utilizing the revenue stream that you're gaining from your share? Then does this make sense for you? So this is such a heavy duty exercise in weighing what makes sense. What I've noticed is that the priorities have shifted in education. No longer is this a nice to have platform for learning. A lot of institutions recognized that last year in the spring, and they scrambled, and a lot of the OPMs were able to gobble up those who needed the help. And where they are right now could be in a very long-term fixed space, but that may be okay, because when you go from nothing to something, that's good. But if you don't do the analysis to understand what you currently have, because you may have something to offer, and you can build gradually in understanding what your institution itself needs, then you can make a really great strategic and informed decision to partner or not to partner.
You've obviously taken a look at this in great depth. So one of the questions that comes from the audience is very pertinent. What would you consider the ideal profile of the person in charge of managing the relationship with the OPM vendors in an academic institution?
So I would say it's multifaceted. If you come from an institution that has their services run by separate divisions, and not within one particular unit where everyone is talking to each other, everyone has their own priorities. So if you have an individual that can see the contracts and the negotiations and the relationship from all of those viewpoints, that's the best person. The one that understands that the academic side will say, I can't offer 50 classes in one semester just because you have 100 new students. It's impossible. Another service that says, we don't have enough people to support our students on a technical end. We have to have someone that can see the viewpoints, the pain points, and what makes sense on a leadership end, because leadership also has their priorities, and everyone has someone to answer to. And you need an individual who can support all of those areas and be able to speak on the pros and cons. And it's not an easy position to have, but it's a fillable one. But they need to be able to understand what each division requires to actually be successful in their role, whether it's marketing, applications, student recruitment, faculty recruitment. That's a big pain point as well. Marketing people, they need to know when are things going to go up, and the conversion from someone just viewing marketing collateral to filling out the form to actually the application and then to enroll, that's about a 1 to 2 year lifespan right there. So this process is lengthy.
So a few minutes ago, you used a phrase that I'm sure a lot of people are very interested in, which is the industry of education.
Yeah.
With the increasing use of BuyIn, does that change what the academic environment is? Or does it just say that we do what we should be doing the best, and then we outsource those that can be done more effectively outside?
You put a pin on that. That was absolutely right. I came from a background that was in corporate, and I had clients. And when I started in higher education, I looked at starting our unit in the same way. Our clients are students, our clients are our faculty. And so they're looking for support, they're looking for services. So I treated education as the industry and to be able to fulfill what they want. At the end, they still need to do the work. Our students still need to learn, they still need to pass their classes, because at the end, they still want that degree. And our faculty have to put in the work too. They have to be able to be engaging and active and robust and keep our students on their toes. So the change happens with the business end. The more we attract students, the more that they ask and they need and they talk about you and your school, and they tell their friends and they tell their colleagues that, hey, I went to this place, don't go there, they're not getting back to us. Or they say, go here. That they were quick, they were easy, and I really feel like someone's there to talk to if I have an issue, especially when you're not on campus and you can't knock on a door and you need someone to help you. You don't want to feel like you're all alone.
Fabulous, Marlene. Thank you very much. This has been illuminating, and I'm sure the audience has gained significantly from this.